If you want to learn how you can run creative routes and add different moves to the top of your route, watch this video. All right, so the first creative route that we're going to be going over today is going to be this comeback route here in the red zone from Ja'Marr Chase using a move called a peek back move. But before we get into this route, fellas, if you're a wide receiver or a quarterback and would like to train with us this offseason, we are coming out to 15 different cities across the U.S. for 2-day long QB and wide receiver camps. So check out that very first link in the description below if you guys would like some more information on how you could sign up to work with myself and my staff of coaches. We will be coming out to San Francisco and Miami, Florida first. Both of those camps are completely sold out, but then we'll be heading out to Las Vegas, Charlotte, Portland, Dallas, Nashville, Chicago, Buffalo, Atlanta, Houston, Philly, Detroit, Boise, and Los Angeles. So again, if you guys would like some more information, want to learn how you can sign up, check out that very first link in the description below. Let's get back to this route from Ja'Marr Chase. So first things first here, anytime that you guys are running a comeback route, an out route, any route for that matter, a post, a dig, what are we trying to make the DB think we are running right off the bat? And that is going to be a fade. Now, there are a couple ways to make this DB think that you're running a fade, and a peek back move is a great one to use in the red zone. So let's talk about why that is. So like, let's say I'm on like the 50-yard line, right? 50-yard line, I got to go run like a 16 back to 14-yard comeback. All the way up till 16 yards, I'm trying to push vertical, right? I'm trying to run hard. I'm trying to keep my head down, or at least my head forward, I guess you could say. Run with full strides, being controlled, and obviously keeping good body language, right? We're trying to get that DB to open up his hips and think that we're running a fade. Now, that strategy is not going to exactly work in this situation because we're in the red zone. We're on like the 2-yard line. So what we have to try to sell is a goal line fade. So that's what Chase is going to try to make this route look like in entirety, right? So he's coming off the ball. He's attacking this DB's leverage, gives him a move inside, takes off to the outside, and he peeks back. Because when you're running a goal line fade, back pylon fade, you're snapping your eyes to the QB quickly. It's just a slight glance over this inside shoulder because you do not want to lose speed. One of the common mistakes that wide receivers will make on this move, and again, this doesn't have to be for a comeback. You could do this for an out route. You could do this for a corner route. Maybe you're out of the slot, whatever the situation may be. But I like the peek on on outside breaking routes. So he peeks back to the inside, right? Like I said, the mistake a lot of guys will make is they overdo it. Their chest will pop up. They start to almost lean back. That shortens their stride, and that DB is going to expect a break. Our goal is to get him to either slow himself down and maybe try to play the fade, or to look back to the inside. And if we can get him to look back to the inside and expect a fade, that's an easy way for us to separate and get separation coming back down to the bottom pylon. And guys, in the red zone, this is wide open. That is an easy money throw for the quarterback. So fellas, on any outside breaking route, in a situation I would say like 10-yard line or closer to the goal line, you could use this peek back move when you have an outside breaking route. So remember, the whole goal on every single route is to make our routes look like a fade, but there's more than one way to do it. So now this next router is going to be from Brandon Aiyuk, and he's going to be running a dig route with an outside release. So this is a route that I think a lot of people did not give enough credit to. You know how they post all the top routes every single week on YouTube, on Instagram. This is a route that I think a lot of people should have been talking about, but they didn't because they don't understand how hard this specific route was. So Aiyuk comes off the ball. He's got a DB who's lined up, honestly, like outside shade. But this DB kind of like disguises his coverage, right? Aiyuk comes off the ball, and this DB holds his inside leverage. So that means that we can't force the inside release. We want to take what the DB gives us. So let's play this thing full speed, then we'll break it down. So he comes off the ball. DB takes that inside leverage. He takes the outside release, and he does a great throw-by move at the top of the route. So let's talk about why this works. So like we said, he's coming off the ball. He attacks this DB. This DB's kind of holding to the inside. He doesn't necessarily keep his leverage, right? So anytime that you're running routes, I think a lot of people get so caught up in like, oh, if it's an inside breaking route like a dig or a post or a curl, I absolutely have to take an inside release or else the route's not going to work. You want to take whatever, the release that we decide to choose against press coverage is not based on the route. It is based on how the DB is playing. And there are situations where like if it's a mandatory outside release, which is MOR, obviously, that is when like you have to run a fade route and maybe the DB's outside shade like this, but you got to release outside because you have another receiver running an outside breaking route, like a 5-yard out or maybe a 10-yard out. And our job is to take the corner out of there or not let him play both of us, right? So that's a situation where you might have to force it. But usually 95% of the time, I would say, you want to take what this DB gives us. So this DB holds inside, he takes the outside release. So obviously against press coverage, this is why Aiyuk is dipping the shoulder. This is why he's trying to run tight. Our goal is to get this DB trailing directly behind me. We call that stacking a DB. Because when you stack a DB, you kind of have like a two-way opportunity to get separation, right? If this DB is running directly behind me, I could give him a fake to the inside and run an out route. I could give him a fake to the outside and run an in route. Now, there are going to be times where you're going up against a DB who's maybe faster than us. Maybe he plays my release well, and he's going to be running hip to hip with me, right? So we can't just give up on the play and just try to run around him. What we got to try to do is slip under him. And using a throw-by move at the top of the break is one of the best moves that you can use when you take an outside release and you have to run an inside breaking route, but that DB is sitting right there. So you see all the way up to the break point at the last second, Aiyuk takes this inside arm and he swats this DB on the back of his shoulder. This is not pass interference, guys. A lot of people will say, oh, this is PI. That's a push off. The only time you're going to get called for a push off is if the ball is in the air and you try to just literally extend and push this guy off of you. This is hand contact at the top of the route. DBs can get hands on us and we can swat their hands off of us, right? So this is totally legal. Now, when we decide to do this move, it is very important. This move is set up with our release, right? A lot of receivers, what they do is because they're afraid of contact from this DB, they'll come off the ball, they'll attack this DB, and then off of this move, they take this really wide angle. They're afraid of getting hip to hip with the DB, aka skinny. Because remember, Aiyuk is dipping this shoulder so he could try to do what? Stack. But it's not just about stacking. If this DB is fast, it's probably unlikely that I'm going to be able to stack, but this puts us in a position where we are right next to him hip to hip. Imagine if there was like a yard of space between the two of us. Aiyuk wouldn't be able to do this move because he wouldn't be able to get hands on the DB. You have to always run tight to the DB. And that goes for any route for that matter. Because when you're tight, you're more likely to stack. If you can't stack, let's say he's got to run an out route, or let's say he's got to run a corner route. What could he do right here? He could lean into this DB with his body and then break it off and get more separation. It's almost like a way of pushing off without actually pushing. You lean into him with your body. But again, you can't do that unless you're running tight to him. So Aiyuk is running tight to him, right next to him, hip to hip. And then at the last second, he shoots those hands. This is another mistake that wide receivers will make on this move. They run with their hand on the back of the DB's shoulder. And that telegraphs it. That's going to get this DB to slow down because he's reading that change of speed. If you're not pumping your arms into the last possible second, guys, he is going to read that. He's going to feel your speed slow down. And again, it's not necessarily about being just balls to the wall, running as hard as you can. It's about being controlled, but not having a change in your speed, right? I don't want a change of my speed into the break. And you running with your hand on this DB's back right before we do the move for like 2-3 steps, that's a change in speed. Let's maintain the same body language, same stride, same good speed all the way to the break point. Then I drop. Last second, I swat him by on the back of the shoulder, back of the elbow, or back of the hip. Those are the 3 points of contact. And when I do that, now guess what? I got all this space to be able to run because I didn't force an inside release, and I got separation. That's the whole purpose, guys. The whole purpose is it's a good way to get separation, but you're not going to be rerouted way inside. So on this play, what does he have? He's got a receiver to the inside. He's got a running back running a route. So spacing on the play is important. Like let's say, for example, Debo right here is running a 5-yard in. But let's say Aiyuk forces the inside release and gets rerouted, and his like 8 to 10-yard in is like right over the top of Aiyuk. That's terrible spacing on the play. We need to keep spacing. So sometimes we can't force the inside release versus a DB who holds that inside leverage, right? Starts outside leverage. We want to attack him. But if he takes away the inside, just take what he gives me and work that move at the top. So again, fellas, when we do all this stuff, like I know I'm breaking it down, I know I'm taking it slow, like Aiyuk is not thinking about all of that in the moment. These are things that he has repped out over and over and over again. And that's what you have to understand. You have to be able to play fast and you have to rep out these different situations when you train. Now, let's look at this next example here from Amari Cooper. So this is a great example of how you would run a slant route versus a DB who's inside shade, but this DB also has about 2 to 3 yards, maybe even, I would say probably about like maybe 3 to 4 yards. Let's call it 3 yards of space from me. So he's inside shade, maybe about 2 to 3 yards away. Now, a lot of people know that when we have a slant route and this DB's inside shade, what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to attack him and then go? No, because it's the same thing as that dig that we talked about. This DB's goal being inside shade. Like the last example we went over, he was outside shade, we attacked him, and then he shaded to the inside, so okay, let's take it, right? But we didn't force it. When he shaded to the inside, we didn't force the release because he was going to get hands and reroute me. right? Now, this DB pre-snap is inside shade. So his goal being inside shade pre-snap, at least that's what we're seeing, because sometimes this DB can disguise what he's doing. But at least pre-snap, my initial thought is, okay, he's inside shade because he doesn't want me to run inside. Now, I have to run an inside breaking route, so how do I do this? Now, most of you guys know that we would want to attack his outside shoulder, outside hip. The goal is to get him to open up his hips and run, so I could slip back underneath him and have spacing, but also get separation. When I attack his outside hip and shoulder, I got to self-fade. It's called the diamond release. But when this DB's 3 yards off, what do you think you got to do with that 3 yards of space? We got to close that 3 yards of space and get hip to hip with him so you could do what with your inside arm? Throw by. So that throw by is not just something you could use on a deep route. You could also use it on a short route. So let's show it full speed, then we'll break it down. So he closes space, then he does the diamond release, swats him by, and you see the amount of separation and room he has for the quarterback. Guys, this is the name of the game right here. Be able to run out of your breaks to open space where the quarterback can throw us open, right? So off the ball, like I said, reason why we want to close the space, reason why we go at him first is so when we take off on that diamond release, there's not a big gap of space with us. Imagine if Cooper right off the ball just took off and went 1, 2, 3 steps, but there was 2 yards of space between us. You see what would happen here? Because this DB didn't open up the gate. This DB was very patient. He kept his hips open. He got hands on the wide receiver, but because we closed the distance with him first, that allowed Cooper to use that inside arm to be physical, swat him by, and then you see he's got separation and good spacing on the play. So fellas, it's more than just like, again, the releases that we decide to choose, the plan that we use off the line is all based on this DB's leverage, right? But it's also based on his distance. Because if this guy was like a yard or two closer, we wouldn't need to close space. We could just take off to the outside right now because we're in close quarters. I could get hands on him. But I always want to close this distance with any DB, especially a DB in press coverage. All right, so now, this next example we are going to be going over is a route here from Tyreek Hill, and this is how you would run a deep, like 15-yard out versus like an outside shade zone coverage DB. So obviously Tyreek Hill has a ton of speed, right? And the looks that he will get often because of his speed, and this is something that if you're like a faster wide receiver or a slot wide receiver, this is what you will see a lot of, is that you'll get double teamed a lot, right? So you'll have a DB who will sit outside shade, and he will also have some kind of inside help, because what's the biggest fear with the wide receiver who's fast other than a deep ball? The biggest fear is him being able to cross over the middle and have 50 yards of space to be able to work with, right? So they double team. They have a DB who sits outside leverage to take away outside routes, and then they have a safety, a linebacker, a nickel inside to take away inside routes, right? So if we have to run a 15-yard out and this DB's sitting outside shade, he's bailing, what should we do, right? Because if we just try to run directly to this area and then break to my out route, this area is called a DB's blind spot. But that blind spot is also a DB's leverage, right? So if Tyreek Hill had to run like a post route, absolutely. Let's go attack his blind spot. Let's try to get him to widen a little bit and then break to the post, because now I got a bigger throwing window for my QB, right? But now this DB, he's outside shade and I have to run to the outside. If I start to run to his blind spot, he's going to widen and really try to protect the fade. Then when I break to the out route, he's going to be right on my hip. And me running my route with this type of angle is going to shorten up the throwing window for the quarterback, because the sideline is an extra defender on the field. We run out of bounds, we're hugging the sideline. We're not doing myself or my quarterback any good. So what we'd want to do is we want to attack his inside shoulder and his inside hip. When you have to run this out route, 15-yard, 10-yard, 12-yard out, and this DB's sitting outside shade and in zone, attack that inside shoulder. The goal is to get him to open up his hips. The goal is to make him think that we are running a deep fade. Because at the end of the day, if he's off in zone and it's like cover 3 or cover 4, right? Let's say it's cover 3. Let's say we got a DB here, we got a free safety in the middle of the field, and let's say we got a DB over here. They call it cover 3 because they're protecting deep thirds of the field, right? Deep thirds. Everybody's in deep thirds, right? So if we're pushing vertical, that DB's job is don't get beat deep. So he is really going to push out of there if we sell it. So how we have to sell this move is we got to make sure off the ball, my body language does not change. At 5 yards, all the way up to the break point, you see how Tyreek Hill his body language has a slight forward lean. He's not raising up. He's not chopping his strides. He's running full speed. All these things, and it's like a controlled full speed, guys. It's not like one of those full speed, like running a 40-yard dash. It's a controlled full speed. He's running with good arm swings, like a normal sprint. He's running in full stride. He's got good body language. All these things, guys, is what makes this DB think fade. They're looking for changes in my body language, changes in my speed, and changes in my stride. And if we don't have that, and we know how to structure the route, like attacking his inside shoulder and hip to flip him, that's when we could get separation and slip underneath this dude. And it's no different than that dig route. Fellas, at the top of the break, see how he swats with this hand? It's no different than the dig with the outside release that we showed from Aiyuk. At the top of the break, we're just slipping under him. But we got to make sure that we're close. We got to make sure that we get his hips to open up. So this is a great example here from Tyreek Hill running a deep 15-yard out versus an outside shade zone coverage DB. And then again, giving the quarterback plenty of room to throw him open. All right, fellas, really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. We always appreciate the feedback. Always great to hear from you guys. And again, fellas, if you would like to train with us in 15 different cities this offseason, check out that very first link in the description below. Coming all the way out from Las Vegas to Philadelphia, Detroit, Los Angeles. So check out that very first link in the description below. Again, I'll see you guys next time.